stillness we cannot see. Echoes tell of what can be. Still, echoes tell of what can be. In the twilight, whispers flow. Through the foliage, fears will grow. Eyes in shadows, watching close. A heavy weight, the silent ghost. Echoes haunting, screams in the night. Lurking just out of sight. Bigfoot watches, shadows breathe. In the silence we're deceived. A cry for help, a fleeting plea. He's the sentinel, forever free.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being patient in the chat there this morning. We had some technical difficulties starting off. Of course, it couldn't be the lack of sleep. You never know. It could be operator error. I'm not putting it on Eric. I'm putting it on myself. So that being said, we're going to get into the disclaimer and let YouTube know that all this music is Nighthawk's original on the Donna app, okay? The AI app. So no copyright strikes. Anyways, copyright disclaimer will be this channel may use some copyrighted material without specific authorization of the owner, but contends that it falls under the Fair Use, which is the Copyright Act of 1976, which makes allowances for purposes such as criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research, parody, and entertainment value under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Okay, and also we use the Donna app for all of our music. So, guess what? You can't copyright strike it. All right, let me take this down, and we're going to get into the thick of it. I haven't had a chance to go to the chat. Say good morning to Eric. Eric's been patiently waiting backstage and listen to me cuss and rant. So it's been one of them mornings, folks. I've been a cussing morning in here. So everything technical can happen. Basically, my StreamYard account got hacked. I had to change all the passwords. So I don't know if it was because of the podcast last night or whatnot, but somebody didn't want me on today. So that being said, Eric, you want to go ahead and just basically tell them what the subject's going to be this morning and all that, and I'm going to go back here in the chat and see who we got in the house.
Yeah. So we're going to be going over some Bigfoot. Hey, the girl. Marlene. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Bigfoot this morning. We're going to hear a personal encounter, and we're going to get a very special guest on today. Very intriguing guest on today. So, and a lot of his stuff in his books is stuff that I find every day in mine. And right there's the book, Field Guide to Bigfoot Stick Structures. Which is very interesting because this is the very same stuff that I find in my woods that I post on my YouTube all the time. And
there's his email and stuff if you want to get the book. Any information.
It's a little blurred out, so we may have to type in the email.
Yeah. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be probably the best because I was trying to read it there and it was blurred out on the deal. So yeah, we got that going on this morning. And You guys know me. I love looking at my little friendly guests that I have here, even though they interact with me all the time. We're going to hear other encounters too, and this is what we like to do. We like to hear people's encounters, and you kind of go over it and look into it, and because you never know, you can always misidentify something too. So we love doing that type of stuff and trying to help people out. And it's always important to get your stories out there. Your encounters. If you don't talk about your encounters, then nobody's going to know about these things. We'll never know if these things are real. Never know. Hey, heifer. Never know if they're not, because people don't want to share their encounters. This is a good way to do it.
I'll tell you, everybody. Also, just to let people know, Rick Reles is a very dear friend of mine, and he has such a great publication here to show you what kind of structures to look for, what not to look for. I mean, it is a very thorough guide to basically everything that you question that could be possibly man-made or cryptid-made in the woods, from broken branches and stuff that look like they're twisted off to all kinds of stuff, And it's the Field Guide to Bigfoot Stick Structures. It's the 4th edition by Rick Reles. And it's got additional references with Scott Carpenter in here and Survivor Man Bigfoot episodes from episode 2. So, and Christopher Noel also has some stuff in here, a field guide to Sasquatch structure. So these are some very prominent people that are in Rick's book, and I can't wait to get him on this morning. And we're also going to bring Carl on. Yes, I said Carl, our buddy in the chat. Okay, he had a Bigfoot encounter that we're going to let him explain this morning about. Before we bring Rick on, Rick's going to come on sometime between 11:30 and 12 o'clock, depending on the time frame. We can only have one guest on at a time because of the technical issues. So that being said, I'm going to put the link in the chat, Eric, for Carl, if Carl is in the chat. I'm not sure if he is yet.
He was.
Okay. All right, I'm going to put it in the chat.
Carl had encounters while delivering his packages.
All right, Carl, here's your link. There's your link, Carl. And what you do when you come on, you can actually, if you don't want people to know your face, which I don't blame you, because look at me. You can always mute your, stop your camera from working, but leave your microphone on, and an icon will pop up on the screen where you'll be positioned in it. Okay. So, but your microphone will be on so we can hear you. We just won't be able to see you. Or you can go full bore present like we are right now. So it's up to you. You do the login. Short of that, I want to say good morning and thank you for all the discussion last night. Last night was a very, very fascinating subject, by the way. We talked about mimics. And Corey, good to see you. Urso, good to see you. Roxanne, thank you. Daryl, thank you. Let's see. Who else? Kyle's in the house. All right. That fluffy guy's in the house.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. We have. I'm trying to get through the names real fast. Michelle, good to see you. Okay. Yes, Carl is in the house. Ida, good to see you. Okay. Who else we got? Misty, good to see you. All right. Who else? Girl with a gong, good to see you.
Did you know, Scott?
Bounty.
Carl, you still in here?
see, this heifer, good to see you.
I just seen a message I missed by Carl when we were.
Yeah, Juno and Scott, good to see you. What does it say?
He's needing me to walk him through it because he's on his laptop and need to know if his phone need to be muted. But I'm
no, he can use
hey,
his laptop.
Savage.
Yeah, Savage,
Yeah.
good to see you. All right, well, you want to work with him on getting him signed in, and
Well, yeah, I was trying to see if he's still in here, but I'm
oh,
not
there he
hearing
is.
from. Oh, there he
There
is.
he is.
Okay.
There he is.
There he
How we
is.
doing, Carl? We'll bring you on here, brother.
Hey, Carl.
I was looking at the laptop and it went off. So I don't know if y'all can hear me.
Oh yeah, we can.
Yeah,
hear
we
you.
can hear you.
Oh,
Yep.
I'm having to do it from the phone. I was trying to do it from the big screen, and all of a sudden it went to Adam Shift. It completely got off of YouTube. I heard when you said the link is here, hit the link, and I hit the link and it went to Adam Shift. I'm not joking.
Oh my God!
It's craziest
I'm
thing in the
telling
world.
you, man, they're hacking my computer system. They don't like what I talk
What?
about at all. I don't know, man. That's just weird.
What are you trying to? You trying to give us a little hint there, Carl? Watch it, Adam Shift. Shifty
I mean,
shift.
it was a video. It took your video completely off and put me to another video.
Wow.
And I wasn't even
Yeah,
doing anything.
that doesn't surprise me at all, brother. That really doesn't. That's a little ridiculous. And we just started talking. I went and I found an old book that I had, and this is what got me started in Freemasonry. And it's a really old book, and it's called The Secrets of the Ages. And if you look at the cover, you can tell, and the binder's really old on it. This was the 4th edition, copyrighted in 1924. And I was showing Eric on the inside where this doctor owned the book, a Dr. McWilliams out of D.C. He was an MD and a DO out of D.C. And basically, he's got written in here in ink, in black ink, Ill and is evil. He is the ruler of storms, fires, and floods. Ill and Inky, they are not gods, they are inverters. It's written right there on the inside of the cover. I thought that was fascinating. So I had to show that to Eric. I haven't seen that book in eons.
I was letting Candy know about the address.
Okay. Well, Carl, you had a Bigfoot encounter, correct?
I sure did.
You want to explain a little bit about? Well, first off, introduce yourself, and let everybody know that you're Carl from the chat. You're our brother from another mother, and always good to have you in the chat. By the way, I want you to know that you're awesome to have in there, and I appreciate it a lot. So, but with that being said, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your encounter.
Okay. Yes, I'm Carl Pellerin, the Bigfoot Whisperer. And I had an encounter 1964, I believe is the year that it happened. I was not quite 5 years old. And but just to give you a heads up, I live in Louisiana, so don't be offended. Yeah, I'm in Louisiana, but anyway, that's just but so you want to hear about the encounter?
Sure do.
Okay, there's a lot of things that led up to the encounter. Before I was, the people that were there when this happened was my grandmother, her daughter, my aunt, and my other aunt, and some lady that I don't remember her name. And there were a lot of things leading up to the encounter. And I know it's going to come up later, so I will say this. We lived not far from a graveyard, just about maybe 300 feet away, maybe 300, 400 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have never back then put any of that together. I wasn't five, but I was street smart. I had a good memory. I wasn't your average 4-year-old kid. I was, an 8-year-old kid, so to speak. I always hung out with older kids and my grandparents raised me.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was I was in the living room and wanting something to do. I wanted to go outside and I was kind of bored. We lived in a little house in Scott. It's a little bitty town. And I would go ride my bike every so often. I'd get hot, get bored, and then I'd come in the house. And my grandparents, I lived with them and they raised me. They ran what's called a little motel, a little Scott motel. And they had a bunch of little single rooms that you could rent around there, like little bungalow type things. And so I was really always watching people, and so I was getting bored, and I was in the living room, and then I went into the kitchen, and I'm thinking, okay, do I go outside or not? Well, the kitchen is about, I want to say maybe about where I was standing at the snack bar, maybe 8 feet to where my grandmother and that lady were sitting. And I heard something hit the house really hard. I mean, it hit like I thought a car where they park at in the front. I thought somebody had come too fast or too far and hit the house. So I took out running and I only had a few feet to run. It wasn't, I was right there. And when I got to the window, I stopped and I remember just staring up, thinking, oh my God, what is this? And it was what people call Bigfoot. It was really, really black, shiny, shiny black. And, forget the fact that I'm looking at a monster, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this thing is so big. And the fear didn't hit me at first. At first, it was more shock than anything. And I'm wondering why my grandmother and my aunt isn't saying anything. And I got to back it up just a hair. My grandmother's daughter had left at this point. She was here for a bunch of other supernatural activity that happened right before this happened. So it was my grandmother, my grandmother's friend, and my other aunt. So I'm wondering why I'm looking at this thing and what is it going to do? And then within a few seconds, I thought, we're going to die. We're all going to die. That's what I kept thinking. And so I looked at my grandmother, and she's sitting in her rocker about 2 foot from the window. And her and the old lady would get their son right there, and they would pray often and what have you. And my grandmother was a Catholic, and so they were doing the prayer rosary. They had the beads doing the prayer rosary, and she's crying. She's got tears. Now, I had never seen her cry ever, not ever. That was the first time, and she's got tears coming down her eyes. And I kept telling her, Mom, look, there's a monster at the window, look. And she would not open her eyes. She just would not. And the other lady too. So I'm trying to touch the rocking chair and she won't tell me to stop. She won't tell me anything. She won't respond. Well, you're street smart, kid. I'm thinking, okay, she's terrified. So am I. She's terrified. And then the fear started kicking in, and I'm thinking this thing's going to reach through the window. I'm standing at the window, and I'm touching just about the window sill. And this thing is up against the window, and it gets really close, and it looks at me. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this thing is so big, so wide, and so shiny black. And so while this fear, and it's happening so fast, is hitting me, I'm trying to look at the fingers. I want to see everything. So I'm trying to see the feet. I'm trying to see, I'm looking at the hand. I've got a very good look. It's right in my face, right there at the window. And it's not away from the window, it's right up to the window. But it didn't have its head touching the window or the hands, but it was really close. And I looked at the door for a split second, and the door was open. We had a screen door and a glass door, and that was open, and the screen door was unlocked. So at this moment, I'm thinking, okay, we're not gonna make it. I mean, and this is hard as a child to have this in your mind, thinking I'm not gonna live out of this. We're not gonna make it. So I told my grandmother, please get up and close the door. Like I could have closed it, but I'm too afraid. And I said, please, would you close the door? Look at this thing. Look. And at that moment, then she opened only one eye just for a second and closed it. It was too much for her. They couldn't. And she was crying. And I didn't know that there were other things that were happening to her that same day, right before this had happened. We discussed it later, but at that moment, I didn't know that. And it smiled at me. It gave me a smile. Then it went more of a wicked grin. And then it showed me its teeth. It opened its mouth. And when it did that, I wasn't afraid for that split second. And for a little time after that, it was like it went from fear to more curiosity. And I was still afraid. Don't get me wrong, but it was more, well, he hasn't done anything yet. Now say he, I don't know. It didn't, have breast or anything. So I just assumed it was just a boy, male. And I couldn't see its feet. It was too close and to the window. But I did see the hands. I saw the stomach. I saw the, from like the waist up, but I couldn't see anything the waist down, until it walked away a little bit. But at first it stayed there, and it lasted probably about, it was a good while, to be honest with you. It wasn't one of those things where you just get a sight of it and then it's gone. It wasn't anything like that. It stayed there wanting me to see it. There's no doubt in my mind. It wanted me to see it. And that's why it hit the house so hard. And I remember looking at it, and then I'd look at my grandmother, and I'd look at the other lady, and I would, all these thoughts running through my mind. It's like, why isn't anybody saying anything? They're not talking to me. They're not saying anything. They were too busy crying and praying. They were doing their rosary. And if you know anything about Catholicism, they don't want to break the prayer chain by stopping and talking to you. So they just ignore you and they just continue. That's what I was taught when I was little. That's all I know of that religion.
Right.
And and once it opened its mouth, it did the smile, then it went to the wicked grin, and then I saw the teeth, and it was like, there's the only way to explain it. It's like I knew at that moment it wanted me to see its teeth. Why? I don't know. And big, white, and square. It wasn't, I didn't see any fangs or anything. It was nothing like that. It just had
square teeth,
huge, enormous square teeth, very, very big. And then he picked up his left hand right before he left. He picked up his left hand and he showed it close to the window like that. And I saw these long nails on it. And he did that. And then it put its hand on the siding. We had lap siding, a wooden house. It was an old wooden house on these cement piers. And took the hand as it was doing that wicked grin and just started scratching and moving towards the door. So it went from the window to the door. And I left the window because I knew he was coming in to get us. So I went to the door, and I was only an arm's length away from grabbing it. And that's when the real fear hit me. And I could not make my legs move. It's not that I didn't want to. It's not really even that I was too afraid to move. I know that sounds stupid, but it was almost like something stopping my legs. Like it was like I could not touch the door. I couldn't reach it. And I was frozen. That's the only way that I could explain it. Just frozen. And then when I peeked through the door, because nosy me, I have to see everything. That's what my grandparents told me. Everything's got to be proven to you, she said. So I
questioned everything.
I looked at the door, and I'm all of a sudden I opened the door and I'm looking both sides, and it's not there. It just vanished. Where did it go?
Yep.
It I don't know. I
I
didn't
think
see it go. It just left.
I think that encounter pretty much sums up a lot of the supernatural Bigfoot encounters that people are having, especially with cemeteries being close by. Um, do you remember what the eye color was?
Yes, I do. I'm glad you said that. The eye color was just black. That's, because all the stories I've heard in the past year, I haven't been doing this very long. I just kind of put it in the back and didn't really want to talk about it. I told it to my wife, and my two sons found out just a few years back, but I didn't tell any of my friends. Nobody knew about it. Nobody I went to school.
Hmm.
I just wouldn't tell anybody. I just figured, I don't know. I didn't. I never had an opinion of it. I just didn't want to talk about it because it's not
Right.
just what happened that one day with that. It was everything that led up to that day is what really was more terrifying than seeing the Bigfoot right there. Way more terrifying than that.
Yeah.
And so, but it was black, and because I looked and I remember saying, I want to see, I want to see the color of its eyes, because I mean, it didn't move, so I was able to see the head, the face, the teeth, the grin, the smile, the nails, the hand, left
Hmm.
hand, but I didn't get a chance to see the back. I didn't get a chance because when it put its left hand and scratched the house, not really really hard, but hard enough, and it scratched it, and it was going from that window to that door that I went to really quick to see it, to try to close the door. I couldn't see. It'd be different if I could see the back. So I can't tell anybody about the feet, the legs, or anything. I wasn't able to see any of that, and then it
Right.
just vanished. But it just had. I will say this. My For years I kept this secret. I'm gonna say secret, quiet, away from my friends and that until I got much older. Then I remember telling. My stepbrother, and that was years later. And I don't even know that I had even told my brother until I think the first time was last year that I told my brother. That was the first time. And he didn't seem like he really believed it, and I really didn't care, to be honest with you. I was there, I saw it. My grandmother at least got one eye open just for a second, and she saw it, and they knew they had. This was nothing new to them, but it was the first time I'd ever seen it. And my grandmother didn't tell me anything about this. Every time I try to bring it up over the years, she'd change it. Well, what do you want to eat for dinner? What do you want? This? She'd always change it. And I knew what she was doing. She just
Hmm.
didn't want to talk. So before she died, she called me up on the phone, and she told my wife, she told me, she says, I want you to bring your wife. I want you to come over here at my house. I have something I want to tell you. I think you're going to appreciate it. So I said, okay. So I told my wife, I don't know what she wants, let's go. So we went, and she was there with her old boyfriend, the man that she was really in love with before she married my grandfather. Don't know how that happened, and we sat at the table, and it didn't take long, and she puts her arms out. I had my hands on the table, and she puts her arms out, and she grabbed my hand, and then she starts crying. And she said, I have something to tell you, and I'm so sorry. And she said, I feel responsible that I know it had to be hell on you all these years. Um, Having things happen to you, and what we saw that day and what led up to that. And I wouldn't talk about it. She said, I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me? And I said, sure I can. And I said, but why didn't you talk about it? She said, I was too afraid. We didn't understand these things. We A lot of these things happened to us back then, to the family, but we didn't know how to explain it to kids or really anybody. We didn't
Hmm.
really understand it truly ourselves. And she said, but I want you to know you saw what you saw. I saw it too. We saw it. We all knew what was happening. And I'm sorry because I think I left a void in you. I left a lot of pain and a lot of hurt in you, a lot of fear that could have been avoided had I talked about it. But she said, I'm sorry. But I want you to know you didn't imagine it. It happened. I said, oh, I know it happened. There was no doubt about that. And
Mm-hmm.
it was, but I needed to hear that, you know. I needed her to say that. Yeah.
Right. Now, I think that that really encompasses like Savage said in the chat just now, that basically when you have a supernatural Bigfoot encounter, it's along those parameters. It's along the parameters of basically, they can utilize that energy field from the supernatural. And that's something that the indigenous cultures have always said about Bigfoot. We have always said that they can walk in both worlds. And basically, making people understand how that is possible is like pulling teeth, to tell you the truth. Um, Bigfoot, there are some out there, and I kind of Eric touched on it on one of his podcasts. I kind of liken them unto almost being the holy men or the medicine men of their clan or their group, and they have more of a connection to spirit, and that's why you find them in cemeteries, okay, or near cemeteries or burial mounds, or sacred native land where was tragedy as far as native, you know, outcome comes from. Because at one time we had such a close bond with the forest people that we traded with them. We understood each other's language, and when we didn't speak each other's language, we used sign language. We all understood that, and those days might be coming back. Um, I didn't think they ever would, but they might be coming back, and that's why we're seeing more and more people have these kind of encounters that you, Carl, have had. So it makes a lot of sense. Eric, what do you think?
So I've got a few questions. You were saying you were having some paranormal activity prior to the Bigfoot encounter, correct?
Correct.
What
Yes.
type of activity was happening? Hey, Tanya, what type of activity was happening prior to it?
Okay. Well, the day before this happened, the day before, my aunt, I believe they hid a lot of things from kids. They didn't want to say too much, but I believe my aunt's husband had passed away. And because he had a guitar, and in the back there was a guitar right next to the back door. So I was in the back bedroom, and we had an antique chifforobe where you put some clothes in there, and there's a couple drawers in it. And that's what we called it, a chifforobe. Oh, I don't know what you really would call it, but and she was putting like a clothesline type thing in there to hang some sheets and that over it so she could have like a little partition to, because I slept in
Mm.
there, and there was a couple of little beds in there. So don't know what the arrangement was there. I believe she was just going to be staying there. But when this happened, that was it. But anyway, she was there getting her little space ready. And I remember looking at the guitar, and I was thinking I'd like to make some music a little bit, just see what it sounds like. And all of a sudden I heard something scratching under the bed. So I looked,
Mm.
and I was like, oh my God, I don't know about this. But I got the courage to look under the bed. And when I looked, because I'm not sure if it's a rat or something, and I don't want to, see a rat. So, and when I looked under the bed, there was this thing as big as the bed just laying under the bed. I don't know how to explain that, guys. It was big. I can't identify it like I could the Bigfoot thing. This is different. It had color to it. This had like a red shirt on, and it had like the rest was black. I'm not clear on that, but I know there was my grandmother witnessed it because I got up and I took out running and I went and got her, and she and my aunt both came, and my other aunt, they came, and my grandmother's the only one. The other one was too afraid to look under the bed. Again, they had all been experiencing some activity. So my grandmother did kneel down and she looked under the bed and she saw it, and she said something like "Oh bon Dieu," she spoke French, oh Jesus, like so. Uh, that was it. Nobody would go back in that room except me. They got up and they went. They started doing the rosary again, started praying again, back in the living room. In front of the window. It was really an all-in-one room. It was a living room and kitchen, not separated, just a little, snack bar to divide the two. And so I went back in the room and I had to look again, and they're praying. I don't know what all's going on, and they're freaking out. So I go back and I kneel down and I look, and this thing is gone. It's just totally gone. And so I called my grandmother and she came and she got on her knees and she looked again and it was gone. And I asked her questions, but naturally she wouldn't talk about it, anything like that. And
just out of curiosity, Carl, did that thing actually have any facial expression that you noticed, or anything along that lines? How it would interact with you, or did it just lie still?
I was too afraid to look. When I saw like a red shirt on it, it was strange. For one, I was thinking, how did this thing get in here? What is this? I'm trying to identify what this thing is, and my mind can't process it. Like, it didn't look like the Bigfoot for sure, nothing like that. But it was a monster of sorts. I don't know how to explain it. For a kid, my age, that's how I,
Right.
reasoned it. And but no, I couldn't. There was one other thing. It had a white bag. My grandmother and I, we were talking about that it had a white bag, but don't have any idea what the white bag was about. It was
That
some kind of
sounds
white bag.
that sounds like um, the Sasquatch that carried away the children in the bag in the baskets. Um, but that was more of a supernatural entity. It sounds to me like you had a combination, just like I had growing up. You had, being located next to the cemetery. You that house had attracted a lot of paranormal, supernatural energy. And it seems to me like they knew that you were susceptible to seeing them, and maybe the adults weren't. So they took a chance on you, you know, interacting with them instead of the adults. And that's usually what happens with children. They usually approach children before they'll approach an adult because they don't trust adults. Okay. Spirit does not trust adults, and you can't blame them. I mean, look at the world nowadays.
Well, we had also
Uh,
had you would hear things in the attic at night while we were trying to sleep. We would
Mm.
hear it sounded like a 300-pound man with some heavy army boots. That's the only way to explain it. And we had three different houses that we lived in that were haunted. I mean, I'll give you an idea, just like I heard, you guys have interesting things that have happened to you. If I would try to tell people for 2 solid hours, 2 solid days, 8 hours a day, I couldn't tell you all the things that happened to me when I was a kid. It was that
Right.
that much. It was
Yep.
it was that much, literally that much. And over the years, I told my wife, I said, people need to know about this, but I don't know. I came to a point where there was a time I wanted to tell everybody, and then I just didn't want to anymore. It was like I don't know. It wasn't so much that I didn't think they would believe me, though that did occur, but it wasn't. I don't know. I really don't have a real good answer for that.
Yeah, the way I see it, as far as how I grew up with all the activity, was that I didn't look for acknowledgement of it happening or approval. I looked at it as making myself believe that it happened. you know, reassuring myself that I wasn't crazy, growing up, where I did and with all the activity that I went through. Um, so yeah, I understand you 150% on that, brother. I really do.
Yeah.
Eric, you wanted to say
So
something?
yeah, hey Richard. So during this paranormal activity going on, I got a new mouse. And I keep clicking the damn button, which exited me out of the screen. So I may have missed this. So was you kind of scared? I mean, there's a lot of fear going on with you amongst everybody else in the house, but it seems like this Bigfoot was focused on you more than anything. So was your fear like really high?
No, no,
Okay.
there was fear. Don't get me wrong. There was fear, but it had happened for so many years, all the way. I mean, even until just till not long ago. And it's happened all my life that you kind of get used to it after a while. I mean, there were a
Amen.
couple of instances that were, yes, it was a brown shorts moment, so to speak, but uh,
Yep.
it's the not being able to sleep at night, having it. Over the years, I've had friends. I told one friend, and I guess that was a mistake. I maybe shouldn't have told him, and he laughed at me. And I told him that the house I was living in was haunted, and he said, well, he says, I don't believe that, and he started making fun of me. I said, well, you know what? Put your money where your mouth's at. I said, how about, Friday night you come and you don't have nothing to do Saturday, do you? He says, no. I said, well, don't you come spend the night? And John, you can
That
come too,
sounds
which
so
is my
much like
cousin.
me.
So John, my cousin, said, "Nah, I don't want to do that." But Matthew took me up on that. He says, "Yeah, I'll go, sure, and I'll prove to everybody when I come back, you're gonna be embarrassed, and I'm gonna tell everybody nothing happened." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, you come Friday night." So he did, and I figured we'd go fishing because we it wasn't our property, but all my grandfather's brothers lived around there, and they had property, and we had these two big ponds stocked with fish, and any time of the day you could find me, that's where I was at. If I wasn't hunting, I was fishing, but it was out there in the woods. And so he came. Well, he keeps asking me, it's we turned in and it was about 9 o'clock at night. Nothing happened to that point. And he says, ain't nothing gonna happen, Carl. You messing with me, aren't you? I said, no, I'm not messing with you. You just have to be quiet. And I said, just quit talking and listen. You'll hear something. It'll be in the attic first. And he still didn't believe me. He kept joshing me and said, "Oh, you so full of it." And I said, "No, I'm serious. You'll hear it." So he was getting sleepy. He said, "Look, man, I can't hold my eyes open anymore. I'm getting sleepy." By this point now, close to an hour had gone by, and I'm getting tired too. No sooner that we start, you know, I'm thinking, "Oh my God, it's gonna make a liar out of me. It's not gonna do anything." Well, within minutes from that moment, thinking that, it starts boom, 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 this loud noise in the attic. And then all of a sudden, you can distinctively hear a rubber ball. You can hear that thing bouncing all over in the attic just like
Oh my
crazy.
God.
And I'm thinking, okay, his eyes, and he sits up and he's like, oh, what was that? I said, it's not so funny, is it? I said, you see what I have to put up with every night, every night. He goes, oh no. And so he went underneath the cover. He was so afraid he didn't poke his head back out until the next morning. He got
Hey,
on his bicycle, left, and he didn't come back. He never came back to my house again. He did
Carl,
come back to
I gotta tell you
listen.
something, brother. I gotta tell you something real quick. The rubber ball bouncing noise and stuff.
Yeah, what is that?
I had that same exact thing happen in my house, and actually, my wife Tracy actually witnessed it. So
Whoa.
yeah, that's not unusual. That you don't really correlate those sounds or even seeing an object fly across the room or bounce down a hallway that shouldn't be there to begin with because it was like a super one of those super balls that you would bounce and it would ricochet off of everything. And yeah, that just blew me away when you said a rubber ball was bouncing.
Yeah, and the rubber ball, that wasn't the only house that I heard the rubber ball, but I would also hear that the something really big and heavy walking up there. So what I did was when Matthew went back home, I can't say if it was a day or two or three, but it was very soon afterwards. I got the courage up, but I was a little scared, and I remember pulling up. I believe it was my grandfather's little short ladder that he had, and I went ahead and well, I got to tell you what grade I was in. I didn't even mention any of that. I believe we were like in the I believe it was eighth grade, if I'm not mistaken, at that moment where Matt came spend the night and all that activity happened. And so when I got up in the attic, I'm terrified. And I had an old flashlight. You don't get much light, but it was enough to see that we had nothing stored up there. Most people have at least boxes and different things stored up there. It was empty. We didn't have any of that up there. It was just a bunch of dust and nothing. I could have easily gone up there and played up there, which I didn't, but nothing. So that was what I wanted to see because I was thinking, well, I thought maybe I would see a ball or something, but no, nothing, just nothing. But every night, and it wasn't every single night, but it seemed like it was every night. You would hear the ball bouncing, and then you would hear the footsteps walking, and not quiet footsteps either. Very heavy, very heavy. Yeah, and this was all the
Well,
time
the reason
since
why
I was little.
the reason why I was asking that because so there's been a lot of documentation, a lot of studies. I've even caught vocals of this stuff here on the property that I shared on my YouTube channel. Bigfoot are very maternal. They're parents. They're good parents. Bigfoots are good parents most of the time. So
Better
I'm
than mine.
wondering if they weren't doing that to kind of distract you from the paranormal activity was going on, kind of like you do with a little kid when you're messing with them. You know, doing that kind of stuff, kind of take your mind off of stuff. That's why I was asking them questions because I was wondering, okay, what's the motive behind this Bigfoot doing what he's doing? Is he trying to distract him from everything going on, or is he trying to say, hey, dude, I'm out here and you've been messing with my fishing hole or my
Yeah,
hunting grounds? That's also another.
yeah. I mean, most of the not always, but most of the times with the big encounters and that, there was always a witness with me. There was always someone there. Like, we had so many things that happened, and the paranormal um, followed me from the time I was a small child, and I had the ability to be able to pick up things like I could walk into a house and tell if someone died in there.
Gift
I
of
just
discernment.
don't know. It just happened. I was able to do that. And I noticed when I was young, I had, certain abilities in that certain things, I don't know how else to say it. And even when I was,
And these
I was,
beings actually saw that in you too.
Mm-hmm.
wow, I was a paint contractor, a painter most of my life. And I retired as a paint contractor. And, but years ago, when I wasn't doing any painting, someone asked us to go and build some shelves at a place in Morgan City, Louisiana. They were opening up a nut and bolt company. So we were putting up shelves in there. And in fact, the minute we drove up, uh, we weren't we weren't 5 feet away from the car, and the garage was already opened up. It was the owner's daughter that opened it up for us, so she could tell us where the keys were and everything, and make sure we locked it and had the code to security and all that good stuff. And so anyway, there were three of us, my two cousins and myself, and they were brothers. And when we got about 5 foot from the car, uh, down the stairs, coming down from the loft up top, they have a bunch of kegs and things up there. But there's a can that comes flying down the stairs and by itself, and then it hits the ground. And then a little while later, it moves again. There's no wind blowing, nothing. It's inside of a big metal building. Okay, and it's deep in the building, and that thing just starts spinning around and bouncing around on its own. And we all looked at each other, and I'm like, oh no, not this again. And so
Yeah.
that night, while we're trying to sleep, things were happening. Same thing, doors, people walking up there. It sounded like more than one person. You could hear a ball bouncing, and all three of us heard it. We couldn't sleep that whole night, all
Yeah.
night long. It was hard to work the next day. We were tired.
Yeah,
But
that's
this has
that's
been
something.
since I
Now,
was
see,
a kid.
I lived in Arkansas for a while growing up too. We moved down there in my senior year in high school, and I played football down there for a high school and Bryant High School. And anyways, make a long story short, me and my buddies used to always take road trips down south. I know right where Morgan City is.
Okay.
We spent time in Falk. We spent time in Texarkana. We were all over the place down around that area of Louisiana and southern part of Arkansas and Texas,
Wow.
looking for the weird and mysterious things. So yeah, I'm very familiar with that area you're talking about.
That's awesome.
That's really something.
Well,
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I was going to tell you that me and a friend of mine, Alex, were painting a house, and this woman had removed everything away from the walls, just enough to give us enough room to paint this 2 or 3 bedrooms, and I think a hallway, and I believe maybe a living room. And so I'm in the room, and there's all these boxes, and Alex went in another room, and I wasn't in there 5 minutes. And all of a sudden, I said, "Someone died in that room." There was a door in that room leading into another room, and I said, "Someone died in there," because I'm feeling something. There's a cold spot, a really heavy cold spot, and I was familiar with that. And but I also felt like there was something there that was not good. And so I started painting a few minutes, and then I stopped. I said, "Man, this is not going to work. I've got to dig in her books," and I don't do that. That's not me. But I had to get to the bottom of it. I figured, well, maybe in this 1 or 2 boxes right here, and I'll tell Alex about it. Maybe he knows something about this woman's past. And sure enough, I found some Ouija boards, a book on how to be a witch, how to with all kinds of witchcraft books, you name it, and she had it.
Man.
It was all in there in those 2 boxes, and she had a lot more than 2 boxes, but that's all I looked at. And I felt bad. I didn't like looking in her boxes like that, and I didn't look too far, but I still looked in there, and I couldn't get that feeling. And there was all kind of activity in there. You started seeing shadow people. We started seeing things, and they would be these big tall shadow things, and they would walk through the walls. And that was like never ending story in my life. I've seen that so many times, it's not even funny. And it gets old, to be honest with you. I'm not afraid of it, but I just don't like it. It just gets old because it was too much happening forever, it seems like.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Ouija boards, if like I said last night, Eric, on the show, if you don't know how to close a Ouija board, then you shouldn't be messing with it, because there's certain ways to do it, and along with other aspects of witchcraft. And trust me, I mean, I know. And if you don't know how to complete the ceremony or the spell or whatever, and how to close it out, you're leaving a doorway open for all kinds of evil to come into this world. And, and I hate to say this too, but that area of the country that you're in, Carl, is very, very well known for witchcraft and voodoo and hoodoo and all that. So, there
Vampirism.
is definitely doorways open all throughout Louisiana.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I'm still stuck on the Bigfoot part of it. I'm sorry, because I'm trying to get in the mind of the Bigfoot, and that's just me being investigative me. So memory serves me correctly, he was kind of giving you this weird grin, kind of letting you know he was there.
Sure.
You know what? It just dawned on me. You were the only male in the house. So that's good. How many males lived in that home?
Well, my grandfather, but he was working that day. Yeah, my grandfather was
Okay.
a carpenter, handyman, and they also managed the little courts that were in Scott, like little bungalow type, little motel. And I don't know how many units they had altogether, but yeah, it was just him and myself, and he was working.
Hmm.
And you
I
said
wonder,
that one
Eric, if
girl.
I wonder if Eric it couldn't enter the house without a male's permission.
I'm, I mean, that's possible, but beings, they're quite flesh and blood. I don't know. That
But
is a
this to
good question, though.
this yeah this being so close to the cemetery, though, it kind of makes me wonder if it's not one of the type of Bigfoot that are notated around supernatural instances or encounters, and it could very
Hmm.
well be something even other than possibly a Bigfoot with the all black eyes. I mean,
Well,
it,
yeah, that's
to
kind of
me,
what I
there's
was like. Is it something mimic?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe it was a mimic, um, because of the location. How secluded was the residence there, Carl?
Well, it was a very little town, and but we lived not there was not much there at the town, but there was only like the little units that we rented out, and then there was a subdivision with about maybe 7 homes in it down the street. A little neighborhood actually is what I meant. And there was a Native American that lived right across maybe 100 foot from where we lived, about 150 feet from where we lived at. And every time we were sick, we would go to his house, and he had all these jars of everything you can imagine, garlic and herbs and potions and everything, and he would go ahead and treat people. And I was fascinated when I would get a chance to go talk to him, which wasn't often, but when I'd get a chance to talk to him, and that he was
Ida,
always
thank
very
you.
quiet.
Yeah, yeah. That just that doesn't surprise me. That is actually a missing part of this whole key that we need to unlock your encounter, because knowing that there's a Native American there that does the healings and stuff, that's a whole new spiritual aspect you're throwing into the whole thing.
You know
Yeah.
what's weird, William, is the fact that all over the past year, I've looked at all the different pictures I could get that people had illustrations of different types of Bigfoots, and there's not a one of them that looked exactly like that one. And it had, like, the face had more hair than the normal faces of the other Bigfoots. Like on the Bigfoots, you'll see they have the skin right here, and this one had more hair, but it wasn't long hair. It wasn't like they'll show Bigfoot with the on the shoulders and the arms, and that face was not really what I would call that far from it. But it just I didn't notice. It had to be a younger one because in my opinion, because it didn't have any of the long hair. And all the pictures you see, and most people that I've heard anyway, I'm not saying that's the way it is. It's just that I've heard that there are certain areas where they have long hair from the arms and that. This one wasn't like that. It wasn't short, but it wasn't long either. It didn't have even any spots that I could see that were really longer than the other. But it was the black, the shiny black that
Okay, I'm
and the
going to. Hey,
size.
Carl, I hate to interrupt, but I'm going to go ahead and bring Rick on. He's
Okay.
waiting backstage, and I'm going to have you both on at the same time so you can both talk about your experiences and your encounters, because I think Rick would really enjoy hearing about this right from you. So
Okay.
hang in there, okay?
Sure.
And Rick, I'm bringing you on now, brother.
Howdy, guys. How are you?
Hey,
Hey,
Rick.
Rick.
Doing good, brother. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on here. Really appreciate it. Always love talking about this subject.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're really getting into the thick of it today. I've already showed your little book and publication on the stick structures and all that, and went through it with everybody kind of, and gave the credit to the credit due on the back, and I put your your email up for people to contact you about encounters and stuff in your area of North
Great.
Carolina. But I've got Carl on here. Carl is one of our family members from the chat, and he's in Louisiana, and
Okay.
he has had all kinds of Bigfoot activity and paranormal activity his whole life.
Okay.
And growing up next to a cemetery too, as a matter of fact, which we were just talking about,
Nice.
which we know that a lot of Bigfoot are spotted in cemeteries and all that, and graveyards and whatnot, and sacred areas, special areas where like burial mounds and stuff.
Yep.
But I want first off, Rick, thank you for being here, and Carl, thank you for being here too, brother. That meant a lot to me hearing this from you.
Appreciate it.
But I want you two to actually, talk with Eric and explain a little bit about your background, Rick, and about your book and about your research and investigations, boots on the ground and all that, if you would, please.
Sure, glad to. So I saw a Bigfoot. I was with a business associate in northern Wisconsin, and we saw one across the road in front of us in 2010. And I was not into this. I wasn't researching or anything. It just happened, and it was shocking to the system. But the guy I knew that was with me, he kind of went the other way, tried to dismiss it, and I dove into it. And you fast forward to now, I've been researching this ever since. I've probably been on over 50 expeditions from British Columbia to Florida. I'm a BFRO investigator. I'm in Western North Carolina near Asheville. But I've investigated in Tennessee, Wisconsin, this part of the world. I've gone out on many investigative reports, met with people on their property. I have seen Bigfoot multiple times over the years, so I certainly know it's real. I've encountered it many times on expeditions. I've had rocks thrown at me by it, trees pushed over near me, experienced paranormal around it, cast their footprints, recorded it, experienced all the weird stuff, electronics going out and being fouled. I've seen, I'll just say it, I got into this thinking it was some type of undiscovered primate. I know it's more than that now. It's a physical creature with paranormal abilities. You run into it. I just did 3 days, about an hour northeast of Asheville this past weekend, up near Linville Gorge, out in the woods around these things. Had a number of things go on. So I'm consistently doing this. I was on an expedition in northern Florida earlier this year. I'm still a BFRO investigator. I got a number of cases I'm working on right now. I wrote up the book on stick structures because it's just kind of an underserved area of attention. We're all amateur researchers, but it's kind of an area that didn't get a lot of attention. And I, had area of research in Wisconsin where I saw these things. All those pictures in there, either mine or from other people that have sent them to me. I try to categorize into a number of different categories. I think there's something to it. I was in an area this past week where I got pictures of some more of these things. They show up in pockets. They'll build an area of them out in a forest, typically where there's activity. A lot of times on habituation sites where there's gifting, they'll do it there. I have 3 of those sites I'm currently interacting with, 2 in North Carolina, 1 in Tennessee. So it's ongoing research. So an ongoing interaction with them. I'm also an owner of an LLC called I Know Squatch, and I have a creative director partner. He's in southern Wisconsin, and we do try to depict Bigfoot the way people experience it. So people peeking around a tree or striding as it runs. And so I go to a lot of shows, festivals, selling merchandise, everything from stickers to hats to shirts to challenge coins, all with original artwork. And I speak at a lot of shows. I MC different events, speak at shows, that sort of thing. So I'm still very active in this, ongoing. I've done a lot of podcasts, talked to a lot of people about this. It's kind of the gift that keeps on giving. There's always more to learn about it. I haven't got it figured out, that's for darn sure. I don't think there's a way to figure it out, but I know for certain that it's a real thing. I'm past all the prove it to me, disprove it to me, debunk it. I'm pretty open-minded to it. Things happen, even paranormal things like you were saying, Eric, Louisiana. And I know a lot of people that have seen this ever since they were kids, and they have paranormal stuff happen all the time. And I've had ghost encounters. Recently had some. These things are around graveyards. I can't figure that out. I've had some really weird things happen land between the lakes. And actually, the biggest one of these things that I saw was actually in Virginia. So I'll tell you, near Hungry Mother State Park in that area, I saw a huge one, about 9 foot tall, back in 2018. So I am very active in this. That's a quick synopsis of who I am, and I'd love to hear what you guys want to say. I can cover any topic of this or talk about any aspect of it. I'm open-minded.
What's funny, Rick, about what you just said about the 9 foot tall one in Virginia? I haven't encountered anything but 9 foot plus tall in Virginia. In fact, in 2018, I had an encounter. I was on my way to work at 4 o'clock in the morning, and this thing crossed the road right in front of me, and it didn't run on 2 legs. It didn't try to get out of sight out of my headlights. I had an 84 or an 87 Chevy C10 pickup truck, 4-wheel drive. Had the glass pack couplers on. I mean, I was loud and proud going down the road, you know. And basically, this thing didn't give a rat's ass if I was in a pickup truck or not. And this thing, literally, Rick, this thing on all fours reminded me so much of the Grafton Monster description.
Yeah.
You know, it was literally the biggest silverback gorilla that I had seen in my life. It was as big as my truck. Okay. Wow. And my truck was a short bed. I mean, we're talking from front bumper to back bumper on a short bed Chevy C10 4-wheel drive. That's not a very overlong truck, but it's a beast. Okay. And when this thing stood in front of me there on all 4 legs, it just kind of, its head was sunken in on all 4s. It wasn't getting out. Okay. It was more like it was compressed in, like its neck repelled within its body. Okay.
Really?
So when this thing going across on all 4s, it literally just took up every bit of the headlights on the truck. Okay. And it just took its time and meandered off the road down into a wash where there was a stream, and it followed the stream up into the mountains.
Wow.
Because see, where we live between the Massanutten Mountains, and we live between the Appalachian Mountains. So we're in a valley, you know, and we have rivers and streams. Shenandoah River, you know, North Fork is right there too. And you know, we've spotted these things and interacted with these things on the waterways a lot here locally.
Yeah.
In fact, a buddy of mine that lives here locally actually had video of one that was a young one that was hiding behind a log in the middle of the Shenandoah River in early mornings, but it was sunlight. And he swears to this day that, you know, he's got it on video, and I saw the video at one point in time several years ago, and it showed a little Sasquatch behind this log just peeping out to see if he was still standing there with his camera. I mean, it's amazing, you know, when you experience these things. Virginia, you know, especially, people don't think about it as being a Bigfoot encountering state. But when we talk about having the states next to each other, like we have with North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Virginia, man, you got all kinds of places for these, you know, Bigfoot to actually exist and not be seen.
Yeah, and you know, you guys jump into, but it seems like up and down the Blue Ridge, the Appalachian Mountains, up and down the spine of that, there's activity everywhere. And you know, I agree with what you said about waterways. You know, whenever I conduct an expedition, we're always looking at where there's sightings, but waterways are always a part of it. Where you have a confluence of water, it's it always seems like it's very active. The other thing about up and down through here, there's cave systems. I mean, Kentucky's full of them. Kentucky's one of the most active places in the country. There's sightings all over there. You know, from county to county organizations that are tracking this stuff, and I've done a number of events in Kentucky, always very active. So waterways, caves, mountains, they'll move up and down them, and raise their kids. They can live in them. They're going to follow the waterways for sure. And
Exactly.
one other thing you said real quick about crawling, I just want to mention. I was on an expedition in North Georgia years ago, and saw one of these things crawl up out of the ravine below and cross under in the moonlight and up a hill to the right. And it was kind of a silver grayish color, but it crab crawled. So what you were saying, it was on four. It kind of animated move. I'm doing it with my hand, but it stayed level. So what you just said about the head sunk down and in, I never thought about that, but the head never rose up above the body as it crawled. It was all like one. And so I'm fascinated with your description. Thank you.
Yep. Eric, you guys and Carl, you guys want to go ahead and talk to Rick about some of the stuff you've experienced, and ask Rick some questions and all that. And I'm going to take a break. I'm having a hard time breathing right now, Rick. So
I was about to say, I live along the Niagara River here in Missouri. We got rivers and caves all over, and I've got tons and tons and tons of Bigfoot activity out here. I mean, daily I can take you out and find something new. Yep. That's just what I deal with out here on my property. I live out in the middle of nowhere. And, a couple months ago was a very, how do I put it? It was something very good happened. It was something I've told people for years and years and years, and I've heard that. I've lived out here for 32 years. Well, 33 years dealing with these things. Right. And hearing this stuff. And I finally caught him on audio, talking and Lakota, talking in Chickasaw, gibbering, messing around with my stuff, howling, hooping. I got all this on video, which William and I did did a breakdown of it on my show one Sunday. Wow. And so I get like all the time, like my game cams. I got 4 game cams up around my property because I'm an avid hunter. And outside of my game cams, you'll always find an X formation right outside of the triggering range of my game cam. Yep. And so I'm curious, is that something you noticed too?
Yeah. So in my book, I break down the different categories. X is definitely one of them. And when you see an X, and again, I'll just jump in, Eric, and I don't think they're making these stick structures for us. We superimpose our own values and think X means stay away and everything. I don't think it's any of that. I don't know entirely why they do it, but they do a lot of what they do. A lot of their symbols, whether it's an X or an upside down check mark or an asterisk, a lot of them seem to follow a lot of Native American symbols. I find that, and I think they have something to do with the communication between themselves. An X in Cherokee means friend. Could mean a present. I'm studying this all the time, trying to figure it out. But I do not think. I think they're markers. Maybe a marker like where you would hunt for others to know. That a human is in that area or hunting. But these things will go up sometimes seasonally too. They'll put a bunch of them up in the spring, take them all down in the fall. I've seen that over and over. It's crazy. But it's some type of communication device between them.
Yeah, see, I get X formations in different spots. Just most of them's right outside the trigger range of my game cams. Okay. And then, like I've talked about it several times. Like, most of the times I don't have an issue being in my woods when they're in there. They know me. They've lived with me for a very long time. They know how I am. Before my mom passed away and I bought the property from my dad, they would only come around from mid to late fall to early to mid spring is when they would come around. And they usually sit right out here in this little clump of woods next to my truck where I park. And they knew when I went to work. And I'd go out to my truck to leave for work and they would howl at me. And I just raised my hand. Hey, guys, good to see you. I'm heading to work. Peace be with you. And we'd be gone. Yeah. And I've never had a bad experience with them on my property yet. I mean, that's not to say it won't ever happen. I just haven't had it happen yet in 33 years. And since I bought the property and Mom's passed away, I've got activity 24/7 here. I mean,
Really?
it's all year round. Yeah.
Huh.
So, I mean, which Dad was the type that he would send lead down range and ask questions later if
Yeah.
he seen or heard something he didn't agree with. So I say that's probably some of what had to do with that, and the fact that I was very respectful to him. I didn't encroach. I mean, there'd be times I go in my woods and you get that feeling, hey, you need to not be in here.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't go in there unless I absolutely had to. And I'd go pretty heavily armed when I did, but I got in, got my stuff done and out. I never got messed with, and I think they knew that. That's always been my feelings. It's like, look, he's got to go in here. We'll just leave him alone. He'll
Well,
be out as soon as he's done. And
yeah,
he gets
the
out.
one thing that I've noticed a lot lately too is Rick, and you can probably confirm this, and Carl too. When we notice and get reports of Sasquatch and Bigfoot sightings on the East Coast or the Southeast, they're usually notated, in the mountain ranges like the Smokies, the Appalachians, the Blue Ridge, all the way down into swamplands. And I have actually got a map here, and I'm gonna show you guys the comparisons of the number of sightings of Bigfoot east of the Mississippi River compared to west of the Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's terrific.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, there is a very big difference. And if you look at it, a lot of the locations where we're talking about is where the majority of the clusters are east of the
Right.
Mississippi River.
Mm-hmm.
So,
You can't even see my area.
yeah, I mean it's literally just swamped in them,
Yeah.
And I kind of Freudian slip there with the word swamp, but they are spotted in swamps as
Yes.
long as there's water. There's Sasquatch and Bigfoot. So
Yeah. I mean, they need water to exist, right? So they're going to be around water, and if the topography provides seclusion or they can traverse, I mean, these things can traverse any kind of topography. We look at it like, well, it's too craggy, too rocky, we can't go there. And there's lots of areas in state and national parks. Nobody goes anywhere near it because it's craggy and mountainous and rocky and rough. These things can traverse any of that. That doesn't mean anything to them. So, I mean, there's an awful lot of forest out there for them to get around in and not be seen.
Rick, when I
Mhm.
was because I had so many incidents of things that happened with paranormal, and since I was really young, and then my incident with the Bigfoot creature, I never knew what to call it until just a handful of years ago. I put all that behind me. I just didn't want to. I wasn't scared to talk about it. I just didn't really want to talk about it. I don't know. It just one of those things that are out of sight, out of mind. And then I
Mm-hmm.
started seeing these programs maybe about a couple of years ago here and there, and I still didn't watch them. It was about Bigfoot, and I didn't pay no mind. But I got to admit this. I said, oh, they're crazy. It's sad because I saw what I saw, and I'm thinking they got to be crazy. So I didn't know if any of that was legit. So, but every once in a while, I'd watch a podcast here on different people's program, and so I did a lot of fishing and hunting, and I wanted to say I probably had encounters with them, and I wasn't aware because I didn't know what you guys know. I never, I wasn't interested in learning about it. I just wasn't. I don't know why. I just wasn't. But there was this one time when I was fishing, and there's a place in Henderson, Louisiana, where I on the Chapelai Basin where I did a lot of fishing at. And I was fishing off the side this day, not in the boat, just off the side. And I was by myself, no one else is there. And the water was really high. And I kept hearing some noise right across the other bank. And it sounded like a bulldozer going in there, but I knew it wasn't machinery. But I'm thinking, what in the world is making all that noise? And
Yeah.
it sounded the best I can describe it, like something was just pulling apart, ripping trees. I mean, just going out of town. I mean, and I could not quit looking at that. And I kept thinking, there's no way a bear's doing that. There's no way.
Right.
It would take more strength than a bear has to do that. And then I remember thinking, oh, that was the first time I really gave it any thought to want to really get back into it, to think about, well, what did I see? Is anyone else really seeing the same thing? I guess that was the moment for me, because
Yeah.
up until then, I didn't really think about it. I wasn't really concerned about it. Not like I am now, where I'm hearing people's stories, you know. Um, and I will tell you, my sister, they reminded me, so that's why I'm telling you. They wanted to know more about. They live in Maryland, and they have they seen what they believe was a giant big dog, a giant wolf, not a dog. They said a wolf, and so they both called me on the phone a few months ago, and oh my gosh, it was unreal. And they're both wanting to talk at the same time, and there you could hear the expression in her voice and in his voice, her boyfriend, and I said, whoa, 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 one at a time, you know. And he says, we seen this giant wolf. It was so big, but I didn't think wolves could get that big. He said, Carl, it was black, just solid black. And I said, okay. I said, what about the size of its head? He said, it wasn't like any big. He said, picture a German Shepherd. I said, okay. He said, about twice that size. He said, or
Wow.
close to it, or close to it. I said, really? You think it was that big? My sister said, I know it. We were both there and we saw it. I saw it with him. And they live on the Susquehanna, okay, basically, and in Cecil County. And they told me that they just kind of wanted to get away and go walking. And they kept feeling like something was following them, and they could hear something walking in the woods.
Right.
And when they got down to the water, they thought it was a nice little place, you know, nice little place for a picnic, whatever. And they seen something to the left. They heard it first, and then they seen it. And it was on all fours, but it picked up its head and it was sniffing around. But it wouldn't get up, but it was just sniffing, like trying to pick up a scent. And she said they hid behind trees, the fear that hit them. And he said, Carl, I've never known fear in my life like this. Never, never. He said, how could a wolf seeing a big black wolf like that? I said, because it wasn't a wolf, more than likely. I can't prove it. I don't know. But I said, more than likely, it probably wasn't a wolf. He said, I'd seen wolves before, but didn't know they could get this big. And I thought, you might have seen a dog man, you know. I don't know. It's just, you know, no one knows for sure, but and they still talk about it. We talked about it day before yesterday. And he says, if you
Well,
know
when you
anybody
talk
that
to
does
them
this,
again, Carl, let them know, when you talk to them again, let them know that Maryland is known very much for a cryptid dogman type of a presence. There are literally dozens upon dozens of sightings of a dogman cryptid. In fact, they have a separate name for it in parts of Maryland. I'm looking it up right now,
Really?
as we speak. Yeah, and I'm going to put it on the screen as soon as I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I'll make a
let's see.
couple comments on the Dogman, just for all you guys, see what you think. But first off, Carl, you know, I've taken some Dogman reports and talked to witnesses on it, hunters, fishermen. One up in New Jersey, you know, one in Wisconsin, a couple, and they're never good. Anytime I talk to anybody that has witnessed or seen this creature, they are, just like you said, scared. They got out of there. It was never good. They felt, when it looked at them, it was demonic, threatening. They're feared for their life. It's never positive. You know, you can have Bigfoot encounters that can be, you know, kind of fun communication wise. You know, people see it, and I have reports of Bigfoot being benevolent, helpful, but the Dogman reports are never, ever good, ever. I have not encountered one myself. Seen one. I was on a expedition in Kentucky and we heard some things like that, and we felt like getting out of there. Did not see it, but it was creepy and close. And it could have been that, because it sounded dog-like. But I've never talked to anybody that had a good Dogman encounter.
and they went back to that same place and tried to find prints, and they said they wouldn't go back again. They're too afraid because they I said, you went back after it scared you that bad? And they said, yeah, we did, but we couldn't find any prints, but we told somebody about it and they were into it. My sister doesn't really believe in any of this, nor does her boyfriend. They listen to me because I have told them about it. And she said, I believe you because I know you tell the truth. I believe you, but I just don't really know. I'm on the fence. I just don't know what I believe about it. I said, well, Lisa, it's like anything else. Whenever you see them, you'll no longer be an unbeliever. I said, that's the only thing I can tell you. But their friends went out there and said, well, let's see if we get any kind of reaction, you know, like our friends did. So they went. And it was two people that I know of. I don't think it was more than that. It was a man and a woman, and they're married. And they went out there, and they said nothing happened. They didn't see, I mean, as far as seeing anything, no prints, nothing like that. But the one thing, pebbles kept getting thrown at them. Really? They kept getting these pebbles thrown at them. They said it wasn't really big, but it got to be annoying after a while. And it scared both of them. And they said, let's leave now. We need it. They felt the urge to leave like right now. So they left. And my sister basically told me the same thing. When they left that spot the first time, they felt such a fear that came on them, that almost a choking fear, you know, a paralyzing fear. And they left, and he told my sister, hurry up and run. And I said, well, that's the worst thing you could have done, in my opinion. But, you know, I guess it's because I'm a hunter and I just, you know, don't run. And she ran. And he found a piece of pipe on the ground and he picked it up. She said, what are you doing? He said, just keep going. And just in case, he said, I had to have something just in case, you know, because, you know, he didn't even have a pocket knife on him. Not that that would have done him any good, but, you know, might have made him feel better. But anyway, I thought I'd tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate all that. You know, the whole, if you look at, I mentioned Land Between the Lakes, and if you look at Martin Grove, some of his research he's done in that area, you know, I've had some great talks with him. He's written a couple of books about it, but it's dominant dogman encounters in there. They're not good, but they've happened over time. The thing with dogman, you know, you showed that map before, Bigfoot encounters, but it seems like dogman encounters, you know, yes, they show in places like Land Between the Lakes, or I know there's a lot of them in Michigan. You mentioned Maryland. It seems like there's pockets of these things geographically, and I don't understand why that is. But they seem to aggregate around. I knew Linda Godfrey, who I used to know, talked about, she passed away, but she was the Beast of Bray Road and was involved in that and broke all that in CNN back in the 90s. And I used to talk with her at shows and things, and she would say, you know, the dogman and the Bigfoots geographically will separate themselves, and they don't intermingle, and they're not friends at all. That she would say, even to the county, she had researched some of this based on sightings in the upper Midwest, and would talk about it. I don't know how true all that is, but there's a creepy that follows and a paranormal that follows the dogman encounters that is not good. Now, when you do get the fight or flight thing around them, I've had that communicated to me. Now, with Bigfoot, I've been zapped. You know, Bigfoot wants you to get out of an area, whether it's infrasound or whatever they're doing. They can make you feel uncomfortable, and you know it's time to leave. But in every case, I know I've either overstayed my welcome or I've stepped into an area where they didn't want me to be. And they're giving me the heebie-jeebies, and I got to leave. But I don't feel like death is pursuing me at that point or anything. I just feel like, okay, I'm unwelcome and it's time to go. And I leave.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when I was on that part of that documentary, Byways of Bigfoot with Linda Eastburn, one of the places we investigated was my property. And when I brought them out there and Ron Howes did a howl, which is something I don't normally do out here, immediately I started getting very negative feelings. Like, hey, who is these cats? Why are they here? Why are they doing this? What are you doing? This is not normal to you. And that's exactly the feeling that I got. And I believe that they know this stuff and they pick up on this stuff. They're very intelligent. And it's like I've told people many times, you know, Jessica's in the chat here, but many other people said, you know, they associated the orbs with Bigfoots, which I, you know, always pose this question. Bigfoots are known as the elder big brother, the first beings. They have a soul, they have a life, they have an energy, they have an intelligence. If we ourselves, when we pass on, become spirits, why can't Bigfoot?
Right.
Well, these orbs that you see are actually the spirits of past Bigfoots. And they're just, I mean, we got orbs around us all the time. We have spiritual stuff around us all the time. So, I mean, that's always something I always pose to people is the perspective to think about on that is they have a soul. They're intelligent. They're family orientated. They're protective. They're caring. I mean, they're like us, just a little different. Well, big different, but they're different.
Yeah, they're a little hairier.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Jessica. Orbs are often in the environment when we're in the woods with Bigfoot. Yeah, I mean, right there. I mean, like I was saying with Jessica, yeah. I mean, and that's why I've always posed that question to him. Could that actually be the spirits of past big? You know, a good example of this, that TV show, not X Files, Destination X, I think it is, with Josh Gates'
Expedition
crew.
X. Yeah.
They were in that cave, and on a piece of equipment, they could see a Bigfoot clearly sitting there and walk past that guy, but that guy never felt it. That wasn't a cloaked Bigfoot. If that was a cloaked Bigfoot, that would have knocked him on his ass. I'm a firm believer that was the spirit of a Bigfoot they caught on camera. Because, I mean, it's simple physics. Something that big we
know, Eric, through history with being Native American, that we have legends and stories passed down from generation to generation, like in my family. And whenever we discuss orbs, and Jessica can confirm this, but I'm a firm believer that when you're dealing with orbs around Bigfoot that are spotted, or Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, you're dealing with their essence, their spiritual essence. That's like their chi, their power. Kind of like when medicine men do ceremonies, we can feel that power from the ceremony in the palms of our hands, and we could float that power above our heads, in ceremony. Now, they could possibly, being so deeply connected to the environment, present that power in a form that the environment can accept it, and it sticks, to them in an orb shape, just like spirit would. When you're dealing with orbs and paranormal, you're dealing with the essence of a being, whether it's alive or unalive. You're dealing with the essence of a being. You could call it the soul, you can call it the spirit, but it is literally their chi, their energy. And that's something that my family and my fathers and my uncles passed down to me, that knowledge that when you see that, it's usually a being that is getting close to crossing over. And the other thing I wanted to bring up too, in Carl's incidents too, with the Bigfoot being outside the window and scratching the side of the house and all that, being next to a graveyard. Here's the connection to the graveyard. We have in our family a connection with the forest people that, we have legends of them escorting us to the other side. In other words, protecting us in our journey to the other side, to the spirit world. Okay. And even the Alaskan natives up in Alaska have that same legend, where they come to where the body of the deceased is, the native person's body, and they will literally escort that soul or that spirit of that native indigenous person to the other side as a protective thing. Now, that's something that a lot of investigators will not correlate with these sightings. Okay. And, as something I've always been firm on, was that when you're seeing Bigfoot in cemeteries and all that. That's one of the reasons you're seeing them there. They're there to escort that person's spirit to the other side. Okay. And Carl, when you were growing up, you were right next to a cemetery. And all that paranormal activity could account for that Bigfoot coming there. I guess the best way to find out would be to ask if you noticed anybody being buried recently that day in that cemetery, because then you could correlate the existence of Bigfoot coming to escort the spirit of somebody to the other side.
So yeah, look, I'll jump in just on the orb thing real quick. So William, I love all that. That's great stuff, and I hadn't thought about the spirit, the soul helping to bring folks to the other side on a protective manner. That's all really, really good. I have seen orbs in research and on expeditions many times. Early on, 10, 15 years ago, I would dismiss it, think it was a trick of the light or something, but it's not. And it is around them. One of the best Class A sightings I had was in Colorado in 2016, and I was with one of 5 people in a canyon at night. And we had an orb above us. We had them around us. We could hear them in the woods, but there were several of them. But we had an orb in front of us, and we're all looking up at this orb above the trail above us. And, I had kind of been taught, when you see something one side, turn the opposite 180 and see, because it's distraction. And I did. And there was a woman with me. She was a sheriff from New Mexico. And we both turned. And 90 feet from us in the middle of a trail is a 6.5-foot tall Sasquatch standing right there, looking right at us. I believe it was a juvenile because it was shaking kind of side to side as if to say, "Uh-oh, I've been seen." But that orb was, yep, no question. But that orb, I think, was set. We were watching that. It was a distraction maneuver. I have since seen orbs many, 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 many times around these things, around cemeteries. I've seen them show up. I saw one in Florida a couple of months ago, right? It just showed up right in the woods. There were 4 of us all watched it. And it was like an old headlight on a car. You've heard that kind of thing, the color. But it showed up in the woods, elevated up from below, and it was just there. We watched this thing for about 15 seconds, and it was observing us, as a group. Why are you people here in the woods? We had Bigfoot activity. We had return knocks and return howls and things. And I almost think I have a friend of mine's a researcher up in Iowa, and he always says, they can use these orbs almost like a periscope. Send it around a corner to view people, so they don't have to give up their position. Maybe use the orb as an essence or an extension of themselves to watch what we're doing. And I think there's something to that. But they manipulate, move around. I've gotten video of these things in the past. If you watch Skinwalker Ranch, you see some of the episodes of that. They've got very good imagery of an orb moving around intelligently. One of their outdoor cams and things, but I've seen that type of movement. It's almost like it moves and stops, and with intelligence, it's seeking out things or looking at things. That's got to be an energy extension of some being or some
Well,
entity.
there is a legend. There is a legend of the red-haired Bigfoot out of your area, actually. Basically talking about how they have the ability to utilize the wildlife to basically interpret visions through them. They can basically attach themselves somehow psychically to whether it's a crow or whether it's a red-tailed hawk, a bald eagle, a bear, a deer, that they have the ability to make a kind of like a mind connection to utilize the eyesight of that wildlife to see in that area.
Yes.
And, you hear accounts of stuff like this. I mean, and I know from doing ceremony, and I wasn't always a nice guy. Okay. I don't know if you know this about my background, but I was raised in the dark arts of Native American magic. Okay. I've participated in skinwalker ceremonies. I've done spell castings and flesh offerings and stuff to basically hex burial mounds sites so people would stay out of them and be scared away by entities that we brought forth through prayer and ceremony to protect the native land. So, and I grew up in this whole era of when being Native American wasn't cool. You were
Yeah.
literally, you had your hair cut off and basically flea powder dumped on you, at Catholic schools and stuff on reservations and told you were beaten when you spoke your own language. Okay. So, and several people of natives in the chat can attest to that. Okay. But there are certain things that when we do in ceremony, it's almost like the forest people, they do the same thing and they
Yeah.
make that connection, because we used to use in dark ceremonies, we used to use a spell casting ceremony to link us up with a flying, bird of prey, whether it be a crow, a raven, a hawk. We would utilize the eyesight to actually see where we were going to actually bring ourselves in that ceremony to, kind of like an astral projection.
Right.
Okay. So if we had the power to do that in ceremony, what's to say that Bigfoot can't do that either? Because they're more connected to the environment than we are currently.
Another factor that people forget about orbs dealing with the woods and Bigfoot is the Fae. There's two types of Fae that show up as an orb. And if Bigfoot's out in them woods, and we know about the Fae, they obviously know about the Fae as well. And they could be more connected with the Fae because they are one with the woods, just like the
Yeah.
Fae are. I mean, that's another aspect. And people seem to leave that out when it comes to this stuff. And you have to put that in there. Fae is something very real. Fae is around us quite often. And if it's around us, it's obviously going to be around them as well. But that's something else. People don't consider that. Is this actually Fae that's around these things?
It's like I've always said too, from the very beginning of my teaching or trying to teach people the Native American aspect of these cryptid encounters and these legends. Like talking last night about Two-Face on Into the Red Rabbit Hole, being, basically a Fae type of a legend that my people had. Basically, there and the one from the Penobscot and Abenaki up in the New England area about a bear creature that walked stiff-legged, that couldn't bend at the knees, and when it slept standing up next to a tree, and it literally its legs looked like tree trunks. And how people would walk past them thinking they were just walking past a group of trees, and those people would never return again from the woods. So there are legends out there that I have tried to tell people about and tried to instill upon them that, if the Europeans, when they first came here, the lost Roanoke for one, okay,
Right.
If they would have listened to the native legends more closely about the Dog Man and about Bigfoot being in that area and other things, I kind of, would think that history would have gone differently for the Europeans in this country if they only would have listened to us from the beginning and took what we told them for fact. Because now you have all these people that are having all these strange and weird sightings of cryptids and paranormal activity combined and supernatural activity combined. And I can't help but think that, Pandora's box has been opened.
Yeah.
And, nobody's saying that right now. And, it's like in the book, when I talked about this book that I have in the beginning of the podcast today, this is a book from 1924. This is the 4th edition. This was actually written in 1914. And this was owned by a medical doctor, an MD and a DO out of Washington, D.C. And it's literally called The Secrets of the Ages. Okay. And it's an old, old book. Okay.
Hmm.
And this book actually got me involved in a lot of my studies in an area that I never really would have considered it. And in this book, it has written in here in black ink. And I don't know if you've ever heard of these beings, but it has this written: Enlil is evil. He is the ruler of storms, fires, and floods. Okay. Now, it also states in here, Enlil and Enki, they are inverters, never gods.
Hmm.
Now, there is a theory out there that the whole start of mankind was started by two Anunnaki beings of giant proportion, okay, said to be 20 feet tall, that weren't originally from this planet, that came here apparently to this world and quote unquote created us, okay, and added us to their gene pool. Now, when I read that in this book, you know, from 1924 printing, copyrighted printing, this prominent doctor in DC, like I said, a medical doctor and a DO, McWilliams was his last name. It even has a street address in here. He was onto something, I think. And there's so many legends out there that we take for granted. But I'm not saying the Anunnaki thing is a reason for Bigfoot being here. I don't think it is at all. I think that I think Bigfoot has always been here. Bigfoot has been a part of the environment longer than Native people. Okay.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it makes you question what we're taught in history, if it's actually true.
Sure.
Because we're taken from birth to college and then on at others' words that they're teaching us the right way, that that reality is what it is in this world, and that Bigfoot doesn't exist. Okay, that it's
Right.
a figment of our imagination, or we're crazy. But I keep reverting back to what my father told me sitting at the kitchen table at midnight one night. And he said, every person at least once in their life is going to experience something that they can't explain. They're going to see something that they can't explain, whether it's shadow movement or whether it's Bigfoot or Dogman or, anything like along the legends. And they're going to deem themselves crazy because they had no idea that these things existed. But if they only listened to the indigenous cultures of North America, they would have, realized that these things do exist and not to count them out.
Yeah.
So, there's so much that can be caught up into this whole scenario of cryptid activity and supernatural activity when it comes to this. And that's why people like Carl are having these encounters that are really, really spiritual.
Right.
As far as that goes, it's a heightened feeling, and a heightened emotion. So, and you're finding out more and more people are talking about it.
Yeah.
It's just odd. It's very odd how, you come to a country and you don't take the indigenous people's words for anything. You disrespect it and you disrespect them. And now you have all this heightened activity over the years. And it's starting to come out more and more and more lately.
Yeah, no, I'll make a couple of quick comments, and then I want to hear from you other guys too. But you said a lot there that I agree with. Number one, there seems to be an elevated connection between Native Americans and a lot of this Bigfoot lore, Bigfoot experiences, and I have over the years in investigating cases found a correlation. I will always ask the witness if they have Native American background or lineage, and it's surprising how many times they do. I mean, it just comes forward, and there is a connection there. Number two, you said something about a mind connection to wildlife. I thoroughly agree with that. I'll give you two because I've witnessed it many times. One is the barred owl. The barred owl is a sentry for these things. Will fly. I have pairs of them show up over. I've had them show up when I first went into a forest during the day. When I first set up a campsite, they're above me during the day. I'm like, what the heck? It's like they're greeting you or a sentry. I've had them in pairs, follow us on trails in the woods, communicate before we went into an area where we had activity. All of a sudden, they were above us and making multiple sounds. So the barred owl to me is a set of eyes and kind of a trumpet for these things. The coyotes too. Coyotes to me have a connection with Bigfoot, and all of a sudden show up. They'll parallel you on both sides, and they're unreasonably close sometimes. And we've all experienced or heard a howl from one of these things. There's a gap in time, and then all of a sudden the coyotes all go batshit crazy. So there is a connection between these things for sure. And last thing I just want to say is I agree with you. It seems like the veil between this physical reality or realm and other places, maybe not physical or other dimensions, realms, etc. I don't know. I haven't been to them, but it seems like the veil is getting thin because there just seems to be more and more paranormal connected interaction with this stuff when you're around it. I can't explain it, but it seems it's almost got to the point where I accept it. If you're around Bigfoot or some of them, and they're making knocks or whoops or doing that, you're just waiting for the paranormal activity to start to happen. It seems like there's more and more of it, and I don't know why that is.
Yeah, very true.
If you want, I've got some pictures pulled up here, stuff that I've taken throughout my time, and most of it's here on this property. I'll have to screen share it. And this is one when William was showing me your book, I was like, man, I find a lot of that stuff out there on my property all the time.
Yeah.
I've even got a hunting blind that's been out on my property.
Yep, seen that.
Wait for this thing. Pull up. There it is. Okay. So, this is a lot of times when I'm finding structures, this is one thing I'm looking for, and that's a footprint.
Yep.
And that's a big boy right there.
Yeah.
I thought that Bigfoot dropped his cigarettes.
Yeah. That was actually this print was taken this deer season. This was actually taken during a deer hunt.
It's a good thing to give you a scale using a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah. Now, normally something like this, I'm questioning: is this actually storm damage or Bigfoot activity?
Right.
When you get, it's hard to see here, but there's footprints all around here. Bigfoot footprints all on the leaf litter all around here, which is what led me to believe this was a pretty interesting little deal here. And these things, where you see where they're bent, they're broken,
if it's twisted too, it's another good way to tell.
Right.
This is that blind. All these things are stacked up and woven right in here. And this was actually, this part here was facing my house.
Yep.
This part here was facing my house.
Yeah. Well, they're incredible observers, and they'll do that. They'll set up a blind so they can sit in it and look at a house or look at a pathway. Horse trails, they'll do them around horse trails so they can watch the activity. But yeah, the way that's correlated, the blind, they'll build it so they can peek in and out of it or look through it.
Yep. And this what went right in front of this too. You can't see it here, but right here is about right in this area here in front of that blind, with an arm's distance, is a deer trail.
Okay. Yep.
That went between the blind and my house. So about roughly right in here somewhere is a deer trail.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found this underneath one of my game cams one time. I have a game cam out in the field, and I found this right underneath my game cam, kind of like it was knuckling.
Mm-hmm. It looks like that. It looks like a handprint that was pushed down. That's good. That's fascinating. And they could be moving, using their hands ambulatory on all fours. They could be moving that way. Put one down.
Crap, I can't pause it. There it goes. So this is the other thing that I look for when we're looking at breaks and twists, is this right here. And you're going to come up. You can see out all this thing is above my head. It's broken.
Yep.
You can see all that's broken.
Yep.
And it's stuck in the ground.
Yes. Yeah. If it's stuck in the ground, that's a dead giveaway. I'll give you a couple other things. just to pay attention to if you're looking for these. One is sure, and I think William, you mentioned it, but that if there's, I think these things have opposable thumbs. I get in this debate with people all the time,
Yeah.
but I think they have opposable thumbs. But they will twist, so you'll see a twist that's been made. Now nature won't do that. So where the twist is, and it's come all around. Scott Carpenter, you shared a beautiful one with me. I think it's in my book. But you look for the twist. Also, look for a focal point in the center of the structure. And typically, when they will build these things, whether it's an X or an asterisk, there's an equal amount of the stick on one side as the other. And another thing is they will strip the small branches off, twigs off the side. They'll take bark off. You'll see that a lot too. So there's a sense of symmetry in these things. They have kind of an autistic look at the world and the woods, and they will almost to a point. I think sometimes they're building these things, especially the big ones, together. So it's a team project. It's not a solo Bigfoot. So I think they're doing things like that, and they'll align and build these things, but you'll see the symmetry in them when they build them.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I see stuff. I mean, this is not even a chip off the iceberg of the stuff that I've caught on my own during documentaries, on investigations. There you go.
Yeah, that's a great one, isn't it? Yeah, Scott shared that with me, and that's from in the Smokies. But that's a live, strong, thick tree, and you can see that thing's just been twisted around. There is nothing in nature that's going to do that. No buck is going to rub its head on something and cause that. No bear is going to grab that and make that happen.
This is what I see around here all the time.
Close to doing that is a tornado. That is the only thing in nature that's going to come close to doing what that picture previously showed was a tornado.
Yeah. And then you'd have damage around that area, which you don't. So I always try to debunk these things and say, did a microburst or a storm do it? And I've had to tell people in some cases, no, this was weather related. But when you get them in a pocket like that, and all of a sudden they're marked and indicated, man, you know what it is. I'll tell you another thing about it. If you have an area of stick structures aggregated into an area, I think they're still observing and watching that. And you can go back to that area at night. You'll have activity. And a lot of times, if we find a pocket of these things built in a 50 by 50 yard square or something in an area in the woods, we'll go back to that at night. And we have activity often. It's a good marker, a good place to go off an expedition and go to, and it happens.
Now, what are your feelings about rock stacking?
So, I can talk about that from experience. They do rock stack, and in certain areas of the country, and they communicate differently. Kentucky, I get a lot of rock clacks, when you're in the woods. In the Midwest, I've heard some of it. I've heard them, you posted something about mimicry the other day. These things are great mimics, but they'll do rock clacks and hard rocks sometimes to try and get you out of it. So they'll use them as tools. They also will do stacks. I've had them left outside of tents when we've been camping. You can play a game with them, and I'll give this to you all and go forward. I've learned this even my own residence in North Carolina at other habituation places. But for some reason, these things cannot stand 4 rocks or 4 items placed together. And they will always separate it into 3 and 1. You will see this over and over and over. Try it, have fun with it, and put 4 rocks in a line where you think they're around, 4 rocks, and they can be beside your hand or whatever. And if you want to talk to the woods and say, hey, I left something for you, do with it what you will. It may not happen immediately, but it will. They will separate it into 3 and 1 every time.
Do you think that they're actually making a point about the Trinity?
Well, that's one of the speculation. You got there quick. So we speculate about that a lot. I don't know, but there is a 3 and 1 connection. I have seen it over and over. I'm always researching what is the significance of 3 and 1 online, trying to figure it out. That does come up. It could be, maybe it has something to do with history or where they are relative to us in this world, other worlds, the connection. I don't know, but they will always go to 3 and 1. It is a consistent thing. I have seen this hundreds of times and documented it over the years.
Yeah, that's like everybody when they talk about the Gugway being a Bigfoot. It's been my experience, growing up and stuff and interacting with these things that, and I hate to call them things, that I call them forest people.
Right.
the intelligence and the kinship that they have to one another, and basically to humans,
Right.
that befriend them, or are nice to them. They have an interaction that is playful, at best, and guardative. They will guard over you to keep other predators away from you, like the natural predators and the bears and the big cats and stuff that are out in the woods.
Right.
But I've always been a firm believer. My father always grouped the Gugway in with being part of the gene pool of Bigfoot. And I was always taught that there was four different types. There was the big ones coming down out of Alaska, that were more apish in appearance than they were human. But they stood anywhere from 9 to 15 feet tall. I was told that the smaller ones came up from South America, that basically inherited the swamplands of the South and the Southeast. They were smaller, 7 to 8 foot tall, but they were very mean and vicious because they're living in an area where they have to fight for survival every minute of the day with gators, poisonous snakes, and other things out there. Okay, that are unnatural. And then I was told about the Gugway, and then I was also told that along the East Coast, along the Appalachian Trail and stuff, and up into New England, you have the kind of Bigfoot, and this is the one that I interacted with most, that have more of a human feature about them. They're big, they're 9 feet tall, full grown, they're about 800-900 pounds at least. And they're just massive, but they're massively intelligent. Far more intelligent than the Gugway and the Bigfoot from the south and from the northern regions of Alaska. So that, I've always wanted to separate the Gugway from being part of the Bigfoot gene pool. And the reason I say that is because our people growing up, we would talk about the Gugway as our name for it would be called Bear Man. And it led me to think about the Abenaki and the Penobscot people out of New England talking about their Bear Man.
Right.
Okay. And that whole legend of them standing next to a tree because they can't kneel or lie down because they can't bend their knees. Okay.
That's crazy.
People mistake them as trees walking past because they see these big legs, and it looks like trees. And then all of a sudden the people go missing. So I've always wanted to categorize the Gugway in that specific group.
Okay.
Separate from Bigfoot, because when you're dealing with the Gugway, or as we call the Bear Man, growing up, basically, I mean, it literally looks like a bear in the face. I mean, it looks more bearish than it does Bigfoot.
Yeah.
When we deal with this type of a being, they are very, very territorial, and they are very, very violent towards humans. They don't like human interaction whatsoever. They would rather stay away from humans or use human as a food source, basically.
Right.
And this is just something that I've always believed, that they are just a different species altogether from the actual Sasquatch Bigfoot gene pool, because of their violent tendencies.
Yeah, I've talked to some folks with experience on that in North Georgia. Similar, they said same kind of thing. Flattish face, bear-looking kind of thing, but not ones you want to interact with. So they may have an abhorrence to humans, but they're not friendly. I would agree with that. I like your other descriptions of your four here, which are all interesting. The human featured ones, the taller ones. You look at the legends of the Tennessee Wild Man, or Nobby is another one in North Carolina, but they get big 8-9 foot tall human feature kind of thing. I was on an expedition in Tennessee a while back with some military guys, and they had encounters with three big ones, and one of them was like 14 foot tall. But they said some human features to them, and so that would align with that too. So you got me thinking along all these lines, which is fascinating. What you said about the swamplander ones, the ones that are maybe up from South America, I hear some things about that too, and fighting for their own survival. That's a fascinating observation. I think the ones around eastern Texas, up and down that, they're talking about three toes and everything. They're never, referenced as being friendly or anything. So, they could be the same types. And those lowlands, survival, et cetera, could be predominant in their behavioral characteristics. So I appreciate you sharing all that. I have to think about all those things relative to what I know. That's good. Really good stuff.
Okay. Well, you guys, if you want to go ahead, I'm going to drink the rest of my coffee and give my voice box a break. So,
yeah, I'm uploading
Carl,
some vocals
if you want to go ahead and divulge, anything that you would like everybody to know, and then we'll have Eric, conclude with you guys, and I'll come back on in about 5 minutes. Okay, guys, give me just about 5 minute break.
Sure, sounds great.
Sure.
Hey, Eric, tell me where you are located again, so I know.
I'll tell you exact things backstage. I don't give my exact location out.
Well, just maybe the county and South Monroe,
Southwest Missouri.
Okay, Southwest Missouri.
Around the
Okay, thank you.
Springfield. Yeah, no problem. Yeah,
thank you very much.
No problem. Yeah, I'm currently in the middle of a werewolf/dogman investigation, which is looking more like a werewolf one. But I do all kinds. I do cryptid, paranormal, supernatural investigations all around here. And I don't want, even in the documentary I was in, I don't give my exact location away because I don't want people coming on my property. So
no, that's fine. I was just curious as to where you are. So that out Southwest Missouri. I have a friend who's out in that area. I do a lot with Betsy Krause. You know Betsy.
Name sounds familiar, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. But the Betsy Krause sounds familiar.
She's in Southwest Missouri. Does a lot of paranormal. Does a lot of Bigfoot expedition research. I've known her about 10 years. Very good in your part of the world. And I got friends in Southern Illinois that not too far from me that do some things too. So I know that's a good area.
Okay, Carl, I'll let you do a few questions. I uploaded some vocals that I caught out here that I'll do after you're done, Carl.
All right. You have any question?
Oh, I don't know if you missed it. You may have missed it, Rick. Carl had an encounter when he was roughly 12 years oldish, 8ish, 12 years oldish.
Okay.
Well, I've had many, but the one with the Bigfoot, I was not quite 5. And but I've always been like street smart, not like the other kids. I grew up around, I was always with older kids, and my grandparents raised me. And so I had that's the only encounter that I had as far as Bigfoot. Everything else has been the paranormal and angels. I was even rescued out of Henderson. I was drowning, and these angels saved me. I mean, it's that's the most phenomenal story that I have. Yeah. And but yeah, the Bigfoot sighting, when I seen him, I was naturally terrified, but not at first. There were moments in between because I couldn't understand why my grandmother wouldn't, acknowledge what was at the window. It was standing on the outside of the window looking in, got real close to the window, and it was looking up. And I got close and I was looking because I'm trying to see its feet and its legs and everything. And but it was big, but nothing like the pictures what I've seen, like the illustrations in that. So in my mind now, right now, looking back, it must have been a juvenile, but a big one. It was still a big one. But that's the only encounter, and I would have much preferred, to be honest, to have that encounter than the other things that I've had happen in my life. The supernatural.
Right.
It seemed to be a hot spot. People used to laugh at me and say, "Man, you attract everything." It's I can't explain it, but I do.
It seems to me like if I don't know if Rick, you and Eric would agree to this, but it seems to me like the more connected you are to the supernatural or the spiritual, the more open you are to it, the more activity you're going to attract to yourself. What do you guys think about that?
No, go ahead, Eric.
I think you're more open to it, yeah.
Yeah, I think once you go through the paranormal door, and it really doesn't matter which way you go in, whether it's ghosts or UFO, alien, Bigfoot, cryptid creature, and I don't care what it is. It's like once you go through that door, all the other doors open up. And I'll say one other thing too, relative to Bigfoot. Once they know that they're real, they exist, everything changes. All of a sudden, all kinds of things happen, and more stuff happens, and it gets more paranormal over time.
You know, Rick, you
True.
mentioned UFO, and I've seen 3 of them in my lifetime. I've seen 3, and I was with my 2 cousins the first time. Yeah, I was about 14, maybe 15, you know, between that age. And we were outside washing my cousin's car. And all of us, it was, you know, just a hot summer day. And I remember that much because they were having car shows and what have you. And we were washing his car and drying it off and everything else. And then we seen something shiny. I'm always looking, but my friend, he passed away now, but he'd always tell me, I see things others just don't. I'm always looking on the ground when I'm walking. I'll see the little flower, the little yellow inside of the little white and the little purple on. He says, you look at the littlest things, you know, but anyway, I do notice that. I seen something in the sky, and I told my cousin, I said, look at that. So they looked at it. Well, it doesn't take but a few seconds, you know, a minute or two, and you know you're not looking at a jet. You know you're not looking at a any aircraft that you're normal used to seeing. A jet can't even begin to move that fast, and I don't care about the fastest jet we have. I've seen the military jets, and there's nothing on this thing. This thing is just, it did like a Z pattern, so lightning fast it wasn't funny, and then it stopped. And then we're looking at it, and we were facing north towards the interstate. You know, I was in the same town in Scott, Louisiana, and I was looking north towards the interstate. And that thing, it came like it came towards us, but it wasn't coming towards us. It was just in that direction. And then it stopped, and it made like a, almost like a lightning strike, so to speak, almost like a Z, but not quite. And then boom, it's not like it went so fast, Rick, that you finally, your eyes couldn't see it. It wasn't like that. It vanished. It was
Right.
moving lightning fast, and then it just vanished. And we all 3 seen it. My cousin said, nobody's going to believe us. Let's not say anything. So we didn't say anything about that until I got much older. But one day in Maurice, I was coming into Maurice, and there was a bright light on the right side of me. I was coming in from Lafayette, and there was a bright light. Well, naturally, I'm going to catch that. So I'm looking at it. Well, I pull over into a parking lot, and I'm staring at this thing. And I know all of a sudden, I know what I'm looking at. There's no ifs, ands about it. It's a UFO, whatever you want to call that. But I know what I'm looking at. And this thing begins to glow so bright. It's not like any light you can ever imagine. There's no way for my vocabulary to describe it. Like it was almost imploding on itself. And it just got brighter and brighter and brighter. And then it disappeared. Like it didn't go anywhere for you to follow it with your eyes. It just
Right.
disappeared. It was gone. And this guy walks out of the store, and he says, what were you looking at? And I said, oh, nothing, you know. He said, no, I know you seen something. Why don't you tell me? He said, look, I'm not trying to be nosy, but man, you got my attention just the way you won't take your eyes off that spot. And I said, well, you wouldn't believe me even if I told you, you know. He said, try me. So I told him what I just told you. And he said, I'm glad you told me that, because he said, did you know just a few nights ago, it was on the news that multiple people were calling in to the sheriff's department that saying that they had seen a UFO just up and down that stretch. I said,
Sure.
really? I didn't know that. And I honestly didn't know that. I hadn't caught the news. And he says, and my wife and I both saw it. He said, we seen one object. It was very large, got very bright. And then it separated into 3 or 4 objects.
Mm.
And they were circular. And he says they were very bright, and they got brighter and brighter, and they got closer, and they merged into one. And that one just took out.
Huh.
And I said, wow, isn't that amazing? That's the first time I had heard of that. Yeah.
Well, I've had a number of MUFON investigator type folks over the years contact me or come to the BFRO wanting to share UFO sightings and Bigfoot related sightings, same properties, that sort of thing. So there is a connection. Um, so I think there's something going on there I don't understand, but it definitely happens. You hear about it a lot. What you described about a single, UFO splitting into several.
Right.
I know folks that study that happens. I don't know why, but people report that sort of thing. I was in the woods this past Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with a group. Tuesday night, we saw a UFO in the sky, and again over us. We don't know why, and it was stop, start, zigzag, stop, start. It had some different funny colors to it. I don't know why that happens, but it does. It seems to happen when you're researching Bigfoot, and I can't explain it.
Well, Rick,
Yeah, we got a lot of
I'm
Bigfoot
not the type
activity
to
here.
report it. I
Yeah,
didn't report it. I didn't call. What I did was I looked up the flight commander to the Lafayette Airport. And again, I'm street smart. I'm not that stupid. I knew if I would start telling them I seen something, the paddy wagon might show up. So I said, I'm not going to report that I seen anything. I'm just going to question. So again, I got the number, and it said Lafayette Flight Commander at the airport, and it had a list of other numbers. So I called that number, and it said Lafayette Sheriff's Department. Can I help you? And I said, whoa. No, I must have dialed the wrong number. And he says, no, you didn't dial the wrong number. And right there, Rick, I got to tell you, my mind is like buzzing around.
yeah,
I'm thinking, there's something not right about this. What do you mean I've got the right number? I said, no, I called flight commander at the Lafayette Airport, and he says, well, we're taking their calls. He
wow,
told me this, Rick, honest to God. He says, we're
wow,
taking their calls.
wow.
They're shut down. I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to call them tomorrow. He says, what is it you want to report? I said, I don't want to report anything. What makes you think I want to report something? He says, well, look, you obviously seen something. Well, when he said that, that was a dead giveaway to me,
Yeah,
because this whole conversation's no longer normal.
right,
So
right.
I said, well, look, I'm just going to call them tomorrow. No, they're closed tomorrow. We're taking their calls too. So wait till you hear the rest of it. So I said, okay. I said, well, you know what? I'm just going to call Monday. He said, well, suit yourself. I said, I will. So what I did was I called a friend of mine, and I told him about it. And he told me, he says, I'm going to call Houston right now. I'm calling Houston. So he calls me right back. He said, they're lying. They're lying. Something obviously had to be. He said, what you saw was probably what a lot of people were seeing. They were buzzing probably the sheriff's department and everything else, and other people might have been calling like you. And he says, that's obviously what happened. He said, the lady wouldn't tell me, but she was laughing. I tried to get it out of her, and I tried everything, but she wouldn't give it up. And she said, but no, they're not closed. That we would know, she said. And he said, well, yeah, I know y'all would know. That's obvious. And
Yeah.
so I said, something's going on. So I'm glad I didn't say anything, which I would not have. I wouldn't
Yeah,
have said anything. But it just goes to show you, that, and he said, well, suit yourself. I said, well, I will. I will. I'm just going to, when I call him, I'll call him. By that point, no matter what day I would have told him that I was going to call him, he'd have said, well, we're taking their call. So I just let it go at that. But they were hiding something. Yeah.
sure they were. Well, it says there was protocol too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, being in the military and being a veteran myself, and Eric also, um, I can honestly tell you guys that probably 80% of the stuff you see and you report is our own devices that they're testing, our own objects, our own crafts, and our own ways of manipulating things like plasma energy,
Right,
and holographic imaging, that kind of stuff. Um, so about 80% of it is our own military R&D. That's all it is.
sure.
Um, so, but you still have the other 20% that's unaccounted for.
Hmm.
So, that's kind of a toss up of what it is.
Yeah,
Just pull it right there.
But
Uh,
anyways, we're going to. we're getting into the almost 2.5 hour mark.
Yep.
So, and I know you guys have other things you want to do today instead of just sit around and drink coffee and talk to me. So, and everybody in the chat. So, you guys are busy. We're going to start with Carl. If you want to, have any closing thoughts and all that, and any information you want to put out to everybody. Okay. And then we'll go to Rick, and then we'll go to Eric. Introduce your books and stuff, your websites, whatever you have that you want people to know about, how to get your books and all that, and how to get a hold of you guys. And we'll go from there, and then I'll do the closing.
Well, I want to say thank you guys for having me on here. I appreciate it. And I never thought I would have done this, to be honest with you, because I'm more the quiet type. Like, you do the talking, you go ahead and you tell me about your encounter, and I'll tell my wife, my kids, and that's about it. There's not a lot of people that I want to tell. I told my friend, two of my friends, all these years, and that's it. I wouldn't tell anybody. I
Feels
told them
good
about
getting it off your chest, though.
Yeah, it's kind of how I am. It's like, I'll tell you more about the other, like, eventually I'll tell you more about the other things that I've seen, like the angels and that, because I know people are going to find that very interesting. The angels are real. I want to say that they're real. And if anybody's got a doubt, don't doubt. They're real. Yeah, I mean, I'm alive today because they saved me. And I was drowning in the water. One day I'll tell you, but I just want to leave people with that, because I know that there's people that question. There's some people that don't believe in God. There's some people that and I'm not going to say, well, whatever you believe. I'm not like that. I'm just going to simply say, when you see, you'll no longer be an unbeliever. Because everything had to be proven to me. I didn't believe anything. I was probably your biggest skeptic growing up until a certain point. And then I had to start opening my mind, because my grandmother always told me, she said, you don't believe nothing. She said, I don't know what's wrong with you, but everything has to be proven to you. But I can honestly tell you, from coming from that position, that I'm not a doubter anymore. And I believe in it. And I've seen angels twice in my life. And it's the most amazing thing in the world. More amazing than Bigfoot or anything like that. It's very amazing, I have to tell you. So I'll end it with that.
Awesome. Carl, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, brother. And we're going to have you on again about the angels, because I plan on doing a podcast about that subject.
Okay.
So we'll definitely stay in touch, okay?
I sure will.
Rick, if you want to go ahead and explain a little bit about yourself too, and your books and stuff, and what you got going on.
Sure.
And how people can find you.
Well, I appreciate it, first of all, William. Thanks for having me on here. And Carl, enjoy hearing from you. And I believe in the angels thing too. I'd like to hear more about that. I've talked with some other folks. I have a friend, Mary Amy, up in New England. She does a lot of shows that talk about that kind of thing. Check out, she's on Instagram and things, and does psychic podcast. Mary Amy, she's great, and she'll talk about that angels topic a lot, which is good. And Eric, I appreciate hearing about Southwest Missouri and some of the goings on there. Hot spot. As far as me, I know Squatch is the little business I have on this. We're on Instagram and Facebook. For any of your listeners want to go check, you can see a lot of things we posted over time there. We have an Etsy store, and we have merchandise we sell that's all original artwork related to Bigfoot. You can check that out. I speak at different shows during the course of the year. I've got a number of them I'll be at this year. We're just at one in Townsend, Tennessee, doing some merchandising. I've got a couple coming up in August that are in North Carolina, one in Uwharrie, one in Marion, and I got some things in the fall. So, we get out to shows and do different things to, talk and show merchandise. But people can reach me also at RRR, 3 R's, whoop, WHOOP, at gmail.com. And I'd love to see any stick structure pictures people want to send me. I'd love to look at it. But I'd like to do this again with you guys too. Get on and talk about any topic, anything. I will always talk about things based on experience, not speculation. And at this point, I've cataloged about 15 years worth, and I'd love to share.
Awesome. That's awesome, Rick. I appreciate you and Carl for being on here today, man. You guys rock. I'm proud to call you my brothers. Eric, you too. Um, I know it's been kind of tough with the whole internet thing going in and out periodically, but that's why I keep the camera off so it doesn't, mess with it. But Eric, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody a little bit about yourself and where they can get your books and all that, and what you got going on with your podcast today and tomorrow.
Yeah. So, I investigate paranormal, supernatural, cryptid, mythological. I love all that, and I believe it's all tied together in one facet or another. It's all tied together. I've been dealing with paranormal since I was 3. Been dealing with cryptid since I was 12. Supernatural since I was 9. I mean, I've been dealing with a lot of this stuff for a long time. I've been all over the world and seen this all over the world. And that goes into my books. A lot of that stuff goes into my books, which Beast of the Ozarks, then production for audio, which is the latest book that I just released. So Beast of the Ozarks First Kill is available on Amazon and will be available soon on audio. I just got through messaging the producer this morning. So that's available tonight on my show on the Bizarre and the Unknown on YouTube. It's Campfire Chats, and that's a safe place for you to come and share your encounters. If you want to share your encounters, I'll bring you on. You need to share it, or we can talk about it in chat. We've done it both ways. That was a show created by the subscribers. That's your show. That's your safe place. Sunday, I have a very special show where we're still continuing with the sea monster themes, dealing with sharks. And I will have special guests Jed Raines and D.A. Roberts on with me Sunday, where we're going to look into, sharks that exist, may not exist, and even the shark human hybrids that Nazi Germany was messing with during World War II. We're going to jump into some of that stuff as well. So that will be Sunday's show. Yeah, I love it. I love that stuff. In fact, my Vangerian Guard Book 1 houses battles based off of the German werewolves of World War II. And that's where that book actually came from. And so it's going to be a good one. I love writing about that type of stuff. I'm working on a couple others right now. I've just been busy as hell with storm cleanup for my job. So I've not had a whole lot of time to write. So we'll get some in. But that's what I got going on.
Nice.
Well, I want to thank you guys for being here today. It's been a great 2.5 hours. We're definitely going to do this again. Okay.
Love it.
And Rick, maybe even we'll bring you back on for the angel one too.
That'd be
Because it seems to
fascinating.
me like you might have a little bit of an insight on that too.
Mhm.
So,
Love to.
but yeah, we'll definitely do this again. We'll have to all hook up and figure out a good time to do it, a good day to do it, whether it be a Saturday or a Sunday or whatnot. And we'll go from there.
Sounds great.
As far as I go, you can reach out to me at lakotaman333@gmail.com. Or you could actually message me within the chat and just basically on Messenger in Facebook. I don't know what to say. We have gone really, really deep and far into it today, guys, with the whole Bigfoot thing and paranormal too, on top of it, supernatural. So that's why I always conclude the programs with, I always say you got to question everything. Okay. Yep. Even myself being so spiritually connected to the indigenous culture the way I am, there's so much that we don't comprehend, that we are unable to see. I mean, we only see and hear 0.0035% of the entire scale of what we're supposed to see and hear. So we are so limited on our interactions with the world around us that we don't know what's going on right next to us. We don't know because we can't see it. We can't interact with it.
Right.
So that's why I always say question everything. The bumps in the night, the screeches in the night, the screams, the howls, you have that right to do your own investigations. And in
Right.
fact, I encourage people to do their own investigations because then they'll be knowers. Okay, they'll go from disbelieving to being a part of that knowing, and
Right.
that's how we all start. You know.
Yep.
So unless you're weird like me and get stuck growing up in it. So, but
Hey, William, I
yeah.
just want to say I don't deliver packages.
Hey, we seen the video last night, Carl.
I
All
laughed
right,
at
guys.
that. Oh yes.
Well,
All
I'll
righty.
see everybody in the chat on Eric's show today and tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning I may not do a program. We'll see. Maybe we'll come back on and talk about the angel thing for a Sunday show. That might even be a good thing.
Yeah, on a
So,
Sunday.
you guys let me know if you want to do that tomorrow at 11 a.m. That'd be fine. We can go ahead and program that in. So,
Well, it was nice meeting you, Rick.
It was nice talking to you, Carl and Eric and William. Appreciate being a part of this. Love to do it again sometime.
Heck yeah. Peace,
awesome,
love, and blessings,
guys.
everyone.
All right.
All right. Y'all all have a
Peace,
good
love,
day.
and blessings, everybody, as Eric and I always say.
All
Take
right.
care.
Very good. Take care. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Bye-bye. Meow, meow, meow. Yeah.
Now, before I get off of here, I want to post a couple things for a couple events that are coming up, and I just I think that I try to get the word out as much as possible. This is a very dear friend of ours, a young brother, that has his own parareality Squatch Holler, and this is
Being very loud.
basically the podcast for what he has going on. And there goes my mouse. Somebody is controlling my mouse again. All right,
Yeah.
let's see here. And then we've got this one. Oh, not that one. Come on, where is it? There it is.
Yeah.
Rowan County Bigfoot Town Hall. This is a town hall that is being put on, and it's in Tennessee, and it's it's something to if you're in that area, you might want to go to it and actually check it out, because you never know, you might encounter something, and your story and your encounter might be something that parallels what somebody else experienced, and that's why I urge people to go to these town halls. You just don't have to go to these cryptid events and these paranormal cons and all that to talk about it. There's several times throughout the year and throughout all of North America that people put on these town halls to talk about these kind of encounters. So I encourage everybody to do that. So this is a good one. Let me see here. There is a couple more that I have. I think this is the other one. This one here is the Alabama Bigfoot Conference for 2025. It's June 6th and 7th, coming up very soon. You can see the list of speakers on there. And I'm sure that they're probably going to have vendors there and probably food truck or two, So be a good one to go to. I'm sure Jessica's probably going to be part of it in some way, shape, or form because she's as busy as we are. So I just want to encourage you all to get out and to experience these things, okay? Because the more comfortable you're going to be around this type of a topic, the more open you're going to be about your own encounters, and you don't have to worry about being being ridiculed or being called crazy, because you're not. Okay. It's just, if you have, and it's like we all agreed here today, if you have a connection spiritually or supernaturally to things of the paranormal and cryptid, you draw it into yourself a lot more. So I encourage you all to get out and experience it. Okay. And do your own research, do your own studies and stuff. When you hear that tree snap in the distance, take a walk out there. Don't ever go out by yourself though. Okay. Never go on an investigation by yourself, Eric. Just so you know, because we don't need anything to happen to you guys. Okay. Things happen to people when they're by themselves, okay, especially out in the middle of nowhere. And we all know I do a lot with a lot of the missing people, and I'm getting really heartbroken because it seems like every day I'm posting something in social media about somebody missing, and it tears you up after a while, and you don't want to see humanity go through that. You don't want to see families suffer in anguish over a missing child or a missing daughter or a son or an elderly person, So we will see you all a little bit later and question everything, guys.
You guys have a good day.
Take it easy, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Look at this pathetic thing.
The stillness where the shadows creep, underneath the veil where the secrets keep. Monsters twist and turn with a silent roar. I find my strength as the night calls for more. The darkness whispers, I breathe it in, embracing the chaos when nightmares begin. In the darkest of nights, I will not hide. Awakening monsters, they rise by my side. With a crown of shadows, I take my throne. In the depths of the night, forever alone. With every broken heartbeat, my fears take flight. I dance with the demons under pale moonlight, beneath painted skies where the lost souls meet. In the night's embrace, there's a rhythm so sweet. I am the silence, I am the screams, ruling this realm, woven from dreams. In the darkest of night, I will not hide. Awakening monsters in by my side. With a crown of shadows, I take my throne.